That's if they can get a seat, of course. Now, controversial Facebook and Instagram ads urging young women to become surrogate mums could be allowed for the very first time in this country under plans seen by this programme, prompting a warning from the government's own fertility regulator. Right now, it's against the law to advertise for a surrogate or pay more than, quote, reasonable expenses for someone to carry a baby. But that could be about to change. Our reporter Jim Reid has the exclusive story.
A camel? Emily and Charlotte are amazing little girls. They're very different. They're very happy.
Yeah, I think the weird thing for me is they switch depending on who's the naughty one and who's the nice one on any particular day.
Caroline and Ian had been trying for a baby for years, but there were setbacks, health problems and a series of miscarriages.
We had a black cloud over us, basically, but we were so determined that we wanted to have children that you just keep going.
Was there ever a stage when you thought, it's just not going to happen for us, we're going to have to decide it's not the route that we're going to go down?
No, never. No, it was never a factor that ever came into it. It was always a case of come what may that we would be parents somehow.
IVF didn't work, so they joined Surrogacy UK, a not-for-profit community of surrogates and would-be parents. They met another couple who already had their own children.
I remember going home to my mum and dad. Sorry. Why am I crying at this bit? This is the good bit. And then the next day, which was a Sunday, we got a call from Surrogacy UK to say that Shell and I wanted to help us to try and have a baby.
There was a longer 3-month getting-to-know period. Then Shell was implanted with Caroline's fertilised eggs.
We went for our first scan and I remember the doctor saying there's one heartbeat. And then we were all getting ready to go. He went, and there's another one.
My heart literally jump out of my chest, I think, is that when you suddenly realise that you've got a really good chance of becoming parents of not only one, but two kids. You then worry about how on earth you're going to bring up 2 children at once.
As things stand, surrogacy in the UK is legal, only if it's not for profit, though expenses can be paid. In most of Europe, including France, Germany and Sweden, the practice is banned outright. In other countries, like parts of the US, commercial surrogacy for a fee has been legal for many years. The government has asked an advisory body to review the law in England, Wales and Scotland, so this won't apply if the surrogate is overseas. The Law Commission has now published its provisional plans.
Surrogacy has always been legal in the UK. There was a framework put in place in 1985, but what we heard is that very much reflects a different era. So what we're doing is redesigning the law so that it provides much greater certainty and protection.
Under the plans, the new or intended parents will take legal responsibility for a baby at birth. Agencies which match surrogates and parents will still be banned from making a profit. But for the first time, it would be legal for firms to charge, to negotiate or advise on a surrogacy. A blanket ban on advertising would be lifted, something the fertility regulator has warned could lead to significant cultural change and perhaps criticism. The most controversial question, payments, is left open, with the public asked for its views on whether surrogates should receive more than just expenses. Some argue that would help meet rising demand and prevent other couples going overseas where the risk of exploitation is higher.
The arrangements might circumvent.
Many women's rights groups, though, say they have serious concerns.
The suggestion of new legislation from the Law Commission really paves the way for a more commercialised model of surrogacy. They include suggestions that young women who've never had children before might be suitable surrogates, and they open up the possibility of advertising for surrogacy services. And again, very little consideration from the Law Commission of what that really means and what that would really look like. So that in itself is also very concerning.
You only hear the rose-tinted version of what happened. You never hear what happens when things go wrong.
This is a side of surrogacy you rarely see. Anna, not her real name, agreed to carry a baby for a friend. She was asked to go to a clinic for IVF.
I had 2 embryos put inside me. Then something happened. I started to encounter hostility from the intended mother. I think she was experiencing emotions of jealousy. Huge alarm bells, but it was too late and I was pregnant. Then both the intended parents were trying to tell me how and where I should give birth. I really started to freak out.
The birth was traumatic. One of the twins was starved of oxygen. An investigation into medical failings by hospital staff took 2 years.
I didn't receive any support at all. Every surrogate hopes after they've gone through this, they can give birth, hand the babies over and get on with their lives. But instead, I was left to relive the traumatic birth over and over again for 2 years, and it was just awful. I'm now left with deep psychological scars, incontinence issues, my abdominal muscles are completely wrecked. Pregnancy can go wrong, birth can go wrong. It has serious consequences which we cannot legislate for. The Law Commission is taking absolutely the wrong approach to this. We should just ban any form of surrogacy altogether.
The Law Commission says it's the job of politicians to decide if surrogacy should be allowed or not. A Freedom of Information request found that before launching its consultation to the public, the Commission met with no women's rights groups. It did meet 11 companies with a commercial interest in surrogacy, including 2 North American law firms. It's understood at least some of those meetings were set up by the Commission to better understand how the law works and the impact of any possible changes.
What we would ask the Law Commission to do as a starting point is to effectively go back to the drawing board, and we would ask them to consult meaningfully with women's organisations and to look at the long-term mental health effects of surrogacy, which, as far as we can see, haven't been considered at all in the run-up to this consultation.
The Law Commission says it has also been speaking to groups opposed to commercial surrogacy. It claims its plans will better protect all sides, including the surrogate.
That protection will include, for example, implications counselling by a qualified counsellor, and it will include independent legal advice, all of which will be paid for by the intended parent. So the surrogate, the woman considering surrogacy, is not left out of pocket.
The concern by some people, from some people we've spoken to, is there is a slight agenda here, that the Law Commission is starting from a point of, let's see if we can liberalise this. This is a slow walk, slow march towards commercialisation.
Yeah, there is absolutely no agenda here. Our intention is not to liberalise surrogacy. Our intention is not to increase surrogacy. Our intention is to provide a safe and effective legal framework for those people who are entering into surrogacy arrangements.
Welcome to the new house, by the way.
I know, it's amazing.
5 years after the birth, Caroline and Ian are still close friends with their surrogate Shell and her husband. The twins know the role that Shell played in their birth.
Oh, yeah! That's like you!
And treat her as part of an extended family.
People help people all the time. People give to people all of the time. I see it no different from, you know, dropping £1 in a beggar's tin on the street to, you know, giving somebody, you know, the gift of life. If you can help somebody, why wouldn't you do it?
Shell supports parts of the Law Commission's proposals, but thinks moves to legalise higher payments or create a more commercial form of surrogacy would be a mistake.
It's not something I would advocate. Surrogacy needs to be based on friendship, trust, and, you know, a commercial payment. It just feels wrong. I'm not selling anything.
The moment it becomes
a service.
The moment it becomes transactional, the moment it becomes a service, then there is reason for both sides to then start having an argument about that transaction rather than about actually the output, which is starting a family, this wonderful thing.
This is not then an easy balance for the Law Commission to strike.
Mummy's tummy?
The full consultation is expected to last until 2021, when a new law will shape surrogacy in this country for the next generation.